We live in an age where paradox has become the background noise of existence. We can simulate entire worlds in our computers, yet we struggle to simulate empathy in our societies. We can see galaxies forming 10 billion light years away, but we sometimes fail to see the suffering one block from home. We've learned to split atoms, bend DNA, and decode the whisper of the cosmic microwave background, the literal afterglow of creation, and yet we still can't always agree on what truth means. That tension between brilliance and blindness, progress and peril, is not a flaw of the human condition. It is the human condition, and perhaps no discovery captures that duality better than a world we once thought couldn't exist, but somehow does. Astronomers called it an anomaly, a contradiction in planetary logic, a planet that violates the rules of how worlds are supposed to form, orbit, or even survive. But what makes this discovery astonishing is not only that such a planet exists, but that it mirrors us, humanity itself, a civilization that by all cosmic odds shouldn't be here either. Let me explain. When the first exoplanets were discovered, in the 1,990 planets orbiting stars beyond our sun, we thought we knew what to expect. After all, we had only one example to go by: our own solar system. Small, rocky planets near the star. Big, gaseous giants farther out. Stable, predictable, reasonable. Nature, however, is not obligated to obey our expectations. The first exoplanets shattered those assumptions. We found Jupiter-sized worlds hugging their stars so tightly they complete an orbit in just a few days. We found planets that orbit pulsars, dead stars, that emit beams of radiation like cosmic lighthouses. We found orphan planets drifting freely through interstellar space with no parent star at all. And then came this one, the planet that shouldn't exist. It sits in what astrophysicists call a forbidden zone, a region around its star where, by the known laws of physics, planetary formation should be impossible. Too close, and the star's radiation should strip away gas and dust before a planet can form. Too far, and the gravity isn't strong enough to hold the material together. Yet there it is, orbiting, stable, ancient, defiant. It's like finding a fish living in boiling water, or a candle burning underwater. By every model we had, this world simply couldn't be there. And yet it is. When astronomers first observed it, they went through the usual scientific ritual: check the data, recheck the instruments, rule out every possible error. And when the data refused to go away, the realization sank in our theories, elegant though they were, had been humbled by reality once again. That's the thing about science. It's not a museum of facts. It's a practice of perpetual humility. It reminds us that nature doesn't bend to our preferences. We bend to it. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to us, but somehow it keeps inviting us to try. Now, before I tell you what makes this planet truly remarkable, I want to zoom out, way out, because perspective is the lens through which all wonder becomes wisdom. Every time we find a world that shouldn't exist, we're reminded of how improbable our own existence really is. You, me, everyone you've ever known, we're all here because of an exquisite chain of cosmic accidents that somehow lined up just right. Our sun formed from the debris of older stars that died in violent supernova explosions. Our planet formed in a narrow band of temperatures where water could exist as a liquid. Our moon, born from a catastrophic collision, stabilized Earth's tilt, giving us seasons instead of chaos. Asteroids brought the chemistry of life. Evolution brought the chemistry to consciousness. If any one of those steps had gone slightly differently, we wouldn't be here to ask why. So maybe the planet that shouldn't exist isn't just out there. Maybe it's here. Maybe it's us. But let's return to the actual planet, because the physics of its existence is as fascinating as the metaphor. This world orbits a star called HD 106906, roughly 336 light years away, in the constellation Crux. It's about 11 times the mass of Jupiter, enormous yet lonely. It sits nearly 730 times farther from its star than Earth does from the Sunday. At that distance, the The star's gravity shouldn't be strong enough to keep the planet bound. By all rights, it should have drifted into interstellar exile billions of years ago. But it didn't. It remains like a cosmic survivor, a planetary orphan that refused to leave home. And astronomers, being a humble yet stubborn species, went back to the drawing board. They simulated its birth thousands of times, trying to replicate the improbable. Was it captured from another system? Did it form from a collapsing fragment of the same gas cloud as its star, more like a binary companion than a planet? Was there once another star nearby whose gravity sculpted the orbit and then wandered off, leaving the planet behind? Each scenario fits part of the data, but none fit perfectly. And that, in science, is where things get interesting. Because whenever our models break, discovery begins. The planet that shouldn't exist now stands as a cosmic question mark. It's a reminder that the universe still holds mysteries bold enough to outsmart us. And that's a good thing, because certainty, though comforting, is the death of curiosity. When we stop being surprised, we stop being alive. But I'd argue this planet teaches us something even deeper, something human. We like to think of rules as permanent. We define boundaries, predict patterns, believe in stability. Yet nature seems to delight in exceptions. It builds order out of chaos, but only temporarily long enough for new chaos to arrive. Stars explode, planets migrate, galaxies collide. The universe is a masterclass in creative destruction. And within that process, anomalies aren't mistakes. They're the sparks of evolution. Every unexpected observation in science, every deviation from the model, every that can't be right moment, those are the places where truth expands. The planet that shouldn't exist reminds us that the cosmos rewards persistence, not perfection. If that world can endure gravitational chaos and still find an orbit, what excuse do we have for giving up on our own balance? Maybe that's the quiet message hidden in all this astrophysics. You can be the improbable one. You can exist where no one thought you could. You can orbit in your own way, under your own rules, and still belong to the same universe. Because the laws of nature may set the stage, but resilience writes the script. Now, let's be honest, when we talk about planets and galaxies and stars, it's easy to forget that all of this is connected to us. Not symbolically, literally. Every atom in your body, the calcium in your bones, the carbon in your cells, the iron in your blood, was forged in the heart of a star that lived and died before the Earth was born. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are its current expression. You are a way for stardust to notice itself. That's not poetry, that's physics. So when we find a planet that shouldn't exist, what we're really uncovering is a reflection of our own story, the story of improbable survival, of defying cosmic odds, of existing against the gradient of entropy. And entropy, if you remember your physics, is the universe's tendency toward disorder. It's the reason your coffee cools, your batteries drain, your car rusts. Entropy is the arrow of time itself, the measure of how chaos grows. Life, then, is rebellion. It's localized order fighting a universal tide of decay. And consciousness, our ability to reflect, create, imagine, is the most sophisticated rebellion of all. You are quite literally the universe resisting its own drift into forgetfulness. So maybe, in the grandest sense, every thinking mind is a planet that shouldn't exist. And here's where this story turns from cosmic to cultural. We live in an age that often feels unstable, politically, environmentally, existentially. We're surrounded by algorithms that predict our every move, yet somehow we feel more unpredictable than ever. We've built machines that can mimic intelligence, but we still struggle to define wisdom. We've learned how to escape gravity, but not how to escape greed. By all accounts, social, historical, ecological, our civilization too, shouldn't exist for long. And yet, here we are. Still orbiting, still trying, still arguing, still learning. We are, in every sense, the planetary equivalent of a miracle. Improbable, precarious, beautiful. The question is, can we stay that way? because discovery by itself doesn't guarantee survival. Knowledge doesn't automatically translate into wisdom. And history shows that civilizations often collapse not because of what they didn't know, but because of what they refused to learn. The planet that shouldn't exist endures because it adapted to instability. It found a way to persist in an orbit no one predicted. That's the metaphor we need right now. Because the gravitational forces acting on our world, climate change, inequality, misinformation, apathy are pulling hard. If we don't adapt, we drift. If we don't learn, we fall. But if we can align science with conscience, if we can orbit wisely, maybe we'll prove once again that improbable doesn't mean impossible. Somewhere, 336 light years away, a planet continues its ancient, improbable dance. It doesn't know it's a miracle. It doesn't care about equations. It simply exists steady, silent, steadfast, a contradiction that the universe decided to keep. And here we are, fragile beings made of the same atoms, looking up and daring to understand. We call it science. The universe calls it participation. Because the cosmos doesn't just exist to be observed, it exists to be noticed, and maybe, just maybe, that's why we're here. Somewhere out there, orbiting in silence, the planet that shouldn't exist continues its improbable journey. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't need to. The laws that once told us it couldn't be there have quietly adapted to make room for it. That's how the universe works. It doesn't argue, it adjusts. But we argue. We resist the update. Every time reality changes faster than our comfort zone, we drag our feet as if hesitation could slow the cosmos. When astronomers confirmed that this strange planet, 11 times the size of Jupiter, was real, not a mirage or a miscalculation, the immediate reaction wasn't celebration, it was disbelief. Because the discovery didn't fit the model, and models are the scaffolds of our certainty. We love certainty. We worship prediction. We feel safer when the universe behaves like a syllabus we can memorize. But the cosmos is not a syllabus. It's a conversation, and half the time, we don't even know the language. That's the lesson hidden inside every anomaly, every cosmic contradiction. The universe doesn't break its own rules. It just writes better ones. And that's not only true of planets, it's true of people. When you study astronomy long enough, you start to see parallels everywhere. Stars live, they burn, they collapse. Civilizations rise, they innovate, they decay. Everything from the life of a cell to the arc of a supernova follows the same choreography: tension, transformation, release. This planet, the one that shouldn't exist, is just the latest variation of that pattern. It's what happens when gravity and chaos learn to compromise. At some point early in that system's history, something violent must have happened: a gravitational tug, a close stellar encounter, a disruption strong enough to throw the forming planet outward into a region where planets weren't supposed to survive. And yet, instead of being flung into the void, it found equilibrium. It adjusted. It stayed. Think about that for a moment. A planet born in turbulence that found a way to last. Now tell me that isn't the story of humanity. We were forged in cosmic violence too. Our solar system began in a collapsing cloud of gas and dust, ignited by the shockwave of a dying star. Our planet took shape amid collisions, impacts, chaos. Our continents rose and fell. Our species nearly didn't make it through ice ages, extinctions, and our own inventions. But we're still here, the thinking descendants of thermodynamic chaos, orbiting through time. We too are the planet that shouldn't exist. It's worth pausing to realize how narrow the window of our survival really is. Earth orbits in what we call the habitable zone, the range of distances where liquid water can persist. Too close to the sun, and oceans would boil. Too far, and they'd freeze. We live inside that razor-thin band, a cosmic Goldilocks zone. And even within it, the balance is precarious. Tilt the planet a few degrees more, and seasons become catastrophe. Slow the rotation slightly, and temperature extremes would make agriculture impossible. Shift the orbit by just 1%, and we could trigger a mass extinction. Yet somehow, everything holds. Through billions of years, through impacts, ice, and upheaval, Earth has remained stable enough for life to persist, not because the universe favors us, but because it allows persistence to work. That's the universe's real bias. Not perfection, but persistence. It rewards what endures. And that is precisely what this rogue planet demonstrates. When models said it couldn't survive, it did. When the odds said it couldn't hold an orbit, it found one. When the system tried to eject it, it learned to stay just far enough to avoid destruction and just close enough to remain bound. That's not luck. That's resilience written in gravity. Resilience is not the absence of chaos. It's the ability to dance with it. Our planet has been dancing for 4.5 billion years. And now, for the first time, the dancer is self-aware. You, me, all of us. We are the universe, learning to watch its own steps. And that brings a kind of responsibility no law of physics can enforce. Because knowing the story changes how you live in it. The Earth has survived meteor impacts, volcanic winters, magnetic reversals, but it has never had to survive us. It has never before been reshaped by a single species that can alter the air, the oceans, the climate, the genome, and the atmosphere, all in the span of a few generations. We are the first geological force to be aware of itself. That awareness is a gift, but it's also a test. Can a species intelligent enough to destroy itself also be wise enough not to? That's our forbidden zone, the region where the models say civilizations shouldn't survive. Too much power, too little wisdom, too much speed, too little humility. It's the cosmic equivalent of orbiting too close to your own star. And yet, here we are. Still orbiting, still learning, still defying the odds. The only question that matters is, for how long? Astronomy has always been more than a study of the heavens. It's a mirror for the soul. Every discovery out there reflects a truth in here. When Galileo turned his telescope toward Jupiter in 1610, he didn't just see moons. He saw evidence that Earth was not the center of everything. And that realization, as terrifying as it was, expanded the boundaries of humility. Today, when we find planets like HD 106906b, we're reminded that even our best equations can't contain the universe's creativity. And that's liberating, because if the cosmos still surprises us, that means it's still alive, and so are we. It means discovery is not over. Wonder is not obsolete. We live in an era where cynicism has become fashionable, where certainty masquerades as wisdom, where the loudest voice often wins over the truest one. But nature doesn't care about opinion polls. Reality doesn't take votes. The planet that shouldn't exist doesn't need your belief to keep orbiting. It just does. And maybe that's the quiet wisdom of the cosmos. To persist quietly in truth, even when the crowd is still arguing about what truth is. We often say science is about answers, but that's a polite fiction. Science is about questions that refuse to stay silent. It's about admitting what we don't know and then using everything we have to learn more. The difference between belief and science is not arrogance, it's accountability. Belief demande loyalty. Science demande évidence. That's what the discovery of this planet represents, not defiance, but data. Not an exception, but an invitation. An invitation to refine our understanding of how worlds form, how systems evolve, how nature bends the rules without breaking them. And if that process sounds familiar, it's because we do it too. We bend rules not to cheat, but to innovate. We test boundaries not to destroy, but to expand what's possible. That's why the universe keeps creating anomalies. They're its way of evolving. And if we want to survive, we have to learn from that. We have to become more like the planet that shouldn't exist, improbable, adaptive, resilient. There's something poetic about realizing that a world 336 light years away might hold the most important lesson for our species. That survival is not about staying where you were meant to be, but finding stability where you're not supposed to. It's about balance between defiance and harmony, between persistence and patience. Because orbits, like civilizations, only last when both motion and restraint coexist. If we move too fast, we fly apart. If we stop moving, we fall inward and burn. The secret of existence is not to escape gravity, but to negotiate with it. And the same applies to everything else. Relationships, societies, ideas. Every system is held together by invisible forces, some physical, some emotional, some moral. When those forces lose balance, things fall apart. But if we learn to listen, to observe, to adapt, to course correct, we can keep our orbit. The universe rewards those who pay attention. So here's the paradox. The planet that shouldn't exist does. The civilization that shouldn't endure might. The species that shouldn't have evolved to ask these questions still asks them. That's not coincidence. That's the signature of awareness. We are the universe doing what the universe does, best making exceptions. And perhaps, in the end, that's what existence itself is. The improbable made possible by persistence. We look up, we study, we learn not to conquer the cosmos, but to remember we're part of it. Because when you realize that, everything changes. Every act of kindness becomes a way to stabilize the orbit of humanity. Every discovery becomes an extension of the cosmic conversation. Every generation that dares to ask why becomes another world that shouldn't exist, but does anyway. Out there, a planet keeps circling a distant star in defiance of probability. Down here, a species does the same, trying to stay in orbit, around truth, balance, and compassion. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe that's the universe telling its oldest story again through us this time. Because somewhere, deep in its laws, written between the constants and the chaos, the universe seems to whisper the same quiet refrain. Exist anyway. Quote, when we say the planet that shouldn't exist, we're not talking about a miracle. We're talking about a reminder. Because every time science meets a surprise, it isn't evidence of chaos. It's evidence that there's more order than we thought, just written in a dialect we haven't learned yet. And if you've ever felt out of place, if you've ever been told that your kind of world shouldn't exist, then this story is yours too. Let's zoom out again. We live in a galaxy with more than 100 billion stars, each one potentially surrounded by its own family of planets. And the Milky Way itself is only one of at least 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Each galaxy, in turn, is a laboratory of possibilities, a library of physics performing experiments on itself. Most of those experiments end quietly. Dust collapses, stars ignite, planets form, and then the slow, endless choreography begins. Birth, evolution, decay. But every once in a while, something strange happens. Something forms where it shouldn't. A star lives longer than it should. A black hole behaves more gently than gravity allows. Or a planet survives in a place that makes no sense. Those are not errors in the system. They're the way the system learns. You could say the universe evolves not just through matter, but through mistakes. And that makes it a lot like us. When astronomers modeled the system of HD 106906, they realized that the planet's orbit was so elongated, so off-center, that it would eventually destabilize, unless something else was influencing it, something unseen. That's when the real detective work began. They started looking for signs of another star nearby, a gravitational companion that might have shepherded the planet into that impossible orbit. And there it was, a faint binary partner, orbiting the main star at a distance so far that for a while, we missed it. 2 suns dancing around each other, slow and patient, anchoring a world that, without them, would have been lost. You see the poetry, right? A planet that shouldn't exist, stabilized by forces it can't even see directly. Now, I don't have to stretch very far to find the metaphor there, because every one of us is orbiting invisible forces to love, memory, community, hope. You don't always notice them, but they keep you steady when chaos would pull you apart. The universe, it seems, writes its metaphors in gravity. That planet, 336 light years away, is more than just an astronomical curiosity. It's a mirror reflecting the resilience of systems under stress. A demonstration that even in regions labeled forbidden, balance is still possible if the right relationships hold. And that's the pattern we see again and again, from atoms to societies. Survival is a function of connection. A single hydrogen atom can do almost nothing on its own. But give it a partner and you get hydrogen gas. Add oxygen and you get water, the universal solvent, the medium of life. Let water interact with carbon, nitrogen, and sunlight. And you get biology. And let biology reflect on itself long enough. And you get us stardust with opinions. The path from hydrogen to humanity is just one long lesson in collaboration. That's why this planet's existence is more than an astronomical footnote. It's a cosmic sermon on interdependence. You don't endure alone. You endure because something somewhere holds you in orbit. And yet we often forget that. We act as if we are solitary, as if our progress is a solo act. We mine and burn and consume as though the planet beneath us were replaceable. We behave as if gravity is a metaphor for other people's problems. But the same laws that hold distant worlds together apply here, too. You cannot alter one part of a system without altering the rest. You can't destabilize an atmosphere, an economy, or an ecosystem without wobbling the orbit of everything connected to it. When you pull too hard on one thread of the cosmic web, you don't just change the fabric, you risk tearing it. That's why environmental science is not separate from astrophysics. Both are studies of balance. Both ask the same question. How long can a system maintain order before chaos reclaims it? We can't just point telescopes at the sky and marvel at balance out there while ignoring imbalance down here. We're part of the same equation. The irony is that we are, by all accounts, the most improbable part of the cosmos and yet the least patient with its pace. We demand results in seconds from a universe that measures progress in eons. We look at 14 billion years of cosmic evolution and expect our problems to resolve in election cycles. But the planet that shouldn't exist teaches us patience. It survived because it took the long view. It adapted over millennia to gravitational shifts that would destroy less stable systems. It didn't fight the physics, it negotiated with them. That's how survival works, cosmic or otherwise. Now, if you think about it, that's also the story of every major scientific advance. Not a sudden revelation, but a slow, stubborn persistence against the drag of ignorance. Copernicus shifting the Earth from the center of the universe. Newton realizing gravity wasn't a force of the heavens, but the same thing that drops an apple. Einstein seeing time and space not as separate, but as a single fabric. Each step forward felt, at the time, like a heresy. Each discovery was a planet that shouldn't exist. And every one of them taught us the same thing. The universe is not built to flatter our assumptions. It's built to reward curiosity. That's why it keeps working, because it doesn't care if we're comfortable. So what do we do with that? We use it as permission. Permission to keep asking questions, even when the answers threaten our pride. Permission to challenge dogma, even when the dogma is our own. Permission to exist in ways that models don't predict, just like that distant planet does. Because survival of a species, a civilization, or an idea depends on our ability to keep learning after we're proven wrong. That's the real forbidden zone, the region beyond ego where discovery happens. And that's where humanity is headed, if we're wise enough to go there deliberately. Think about how much we've already learned. We've mapped the age of the universe, decoded the DNA of life, measured the curvature of space-time, walked on our own moon, and yet we still argue about facts, about whether science and spirituality can coexist, about whether curiosity is worth the cost. Here's the truth. We are all descendants of explorers. Every cell in your body is a record of survival against impossible odds. You are the product of 4 billion years of resilience. So when we look up and see a planet that shouldn't exist, we're not just seeing something new in the sky, we're seeing something old in ourselves. The instinct to endure, the impulse to continue, the quiet, stubborn gravity that keeps us from drifting into nothingness. And someday, perhaps centuries from now, when our descendants travel to other stars, they'll look back at Earth the way we look at HD 106906b as an improbable world that somehow found balance. Maybe they'll find their own anomalies, planets that rewrite the rules again. And they'll remember that back in the 21st century, there was a species that started learning the lesson the cosmos had been trying to teach all along. That impossibility is just another word for not yet understood. That's the real discovery, the one bigger than any telescope can capture. Because if one improbable planet can survive chaos, maybe one improbable species can too. If one world can hold its orbit in defiance of destruction, maybe another can hold its conscience in defiance of indifference. We just have to decide that survival isn't enough. We have to deserve to survive. That's what separates life from existence, and civilization from chaos. The willingness to adapt, to connect, to care. That's what the universe seems to favor, not the strongest, not the fastest, but the ones who can keep orbiting, keep learning, keep changing without losing their center. And that, perhaps, is the real definition of life. Organized persistence in the face of entropy. The ability to say, I shouldn't be here, and mean it as gratitude, not complaint. So maybe, in the end, the planet that shouldn't exist isn't out there, it's us. Maybe Earth itself is the universe's greatest anomaly. A world that learned to know itself, a species that learned to care. And if we want to stay in orbit around that miracle, we'd better remember the laws that make it possible. The law of connection, the law of curiosity, the law of balance. Three simple forces strong enough to hold a civilization together if we let them. The universe has already shown us the model. Now it's our turn to follow the orbit. Look up tonight and know this. You are living on a world that, by all rights, shouldn't exist. A planet that spun life from dust, consciousness from chemistry, purpose from probability. If that doesn't humble you, it should. If it doesn't inspire you, look again. Because in a universe that makes no promises, the simple fact that we're still here is the most astonishing discovery of all. We are the planet that shouldn't exist, but we do. And that means there's still time to make it count. If there's one thing the cosmos keeps reminding us, it's that nothing lasts forever, not stars, not planets, not even the laws of physics as we understand them. But while nothing lasts forever, everything leaves something behind. Stars leave elements. Planets leave stories. Civilizations, if they're lucky, leave meaning. And meaning, in a way, is the most powerful force in the universe because it doesn't depend on mass or momentum. It survives through consciousness, through memory, through care. When the light from that improbable planet finally reaches us, it's not just photons hitting a telescope mirror. It's history arriving at our doorstep. It's the universe saying, this happened, I persisted. And when we receive that light, when we study it, when we try to understand it, we're not just doing science, we're participating in the act of continuation. The light travels for centuries through the vacuum of space, but it needs eyes, it needs minds, it needs us to complete its journey. We are not passive observers in the cosmic story. We are the final chapter of every photon's pilgrimage. That realization should change how we live, because it means that awareness itself is a form of gravity, a binding force that holds meaning together across time. Every act of curiosity, every question, every gesture of care adds a little more coherence to the universe. And every act of ignorance, every lie, every cruelty introduces a little more entropy. The choice is constant. Contribute to the structure or to the unraveling. The universe will keep expanding either way, but which part of it we inhabit, the order or the chaos, depends on us. When astronomers talk about that forbidden orbit, the region where this planet shouldn't exist, they describe it with a mix of awe and envy, because that orbit represents the impossible becoming sustainable. It's a mathematical defiance, a balance so delicate that the slightest misstep would lead to oblivion. Yet somehow, the system found a way, not because it ignored the laws of physics, but because it worked within them creatively. And that, I think, is the greatest wisdom the cosmos offers us. We don't get to rewrite the laws of nature, but we do get to find grace within them. Gravity says, you will fall. Life says, learn to fly before you do. Entropy says, you will decay. Consciousness says, understand before you fade. The universe says, nothing lasts. Meaning says, that's exactly why it matters. I sometimes imagine what it would look like standing on that distant world, a planet circling two suns, so far from its center that its year lasts millennia. The sky there would be strange. Two stars rising, one pale, one golden. The temperature so cold that even the starlight would feel brittle. You'd look up and see your twin suns never quite meeting, always circling each other like an ancient conversation. And you'd know in your bones that you existed because balance, improbable, fragile balance was maintained. That's what our own world is doing right now. Earth is balancing on the edge of survivability, not because nature is cruel, but because equilibrium is always temporary. That's the cost of existence. To remain requires attention. And maybe that's why consciousness evolved, to make attention possible. We are nature's self-correcting mechanism. We are awareness acting as maintenance. We are the planet watching itself asking, am I still okay? That's the secret thread that connects astrophysics to empathy. Both are forms of paying attention. A telescope studies distant stars. A heart studies the people close by. In both cases, the act of observation changes the observer. In both cases, the reward is understanding and the responsibility that comes with it. Because once you see clearly, you can't pretend you didn't. Once you understand how rare stability is cosmic, environmental, emotional, you can't live carelessly. You start to protect what's fragile. You start to cherish what's finite. That's what science is for, not to strip away mystery, but to deepen appreciation. When people ask me why I love the universe, I tell them it's because it tells the truth beautifully. Even when the truth is humbling, even when it hurts. This planet that shouldn't exist, this cosmic anomaly, didn't make us feel small. It made us feel connected. It reminded us that survival is possible, even under impossible circumstances. It reminded us that nature is cleverer than our equations. It reminded us that endurance is not about strength, but about adaptability. And in that sense, it's not an alien story at all. It's a human story told in the language of light years. Because isn't that what we are? A species that keeps finding new ways to orbit survival? Every generation rewrites the equation, adjusts the trajectory, refines the balance. We've learned to turn chaos into order, to turn energy into art, to turn starlight into understanding. We've turned our telescopes outward and in the process turned our minds inward. Every planet we find out there is really a mirror turned toward ourselves. Every orbit is a question. How do we stay balanced? Every discovery is an answer. By paying attention, that's what the planet that shouldn't exist is trying to tell us. Not that the laws of nature are broken, but that the laws of nature are generous. Generous enough to allow exceptions. Generous enough to let improbability breathe. Generous enough to let one small world orbiting an average star create symphonies and spacecraft and sentences like these. We should take that generosity personally, because it means we belong here, not because we were destined to, but because we've learned how to. That's what the universe rewards: participation. It doesn't ask for worship. It asks for involvement, for curiosity, for care. It asks us to keep the conversation going, because as long as we're asking questions, the universe remains aware of itself. So here we are, a species on a fragile world, staring across the void at another fragile world, and realizing that both of us are miracles of balance. That's the gift of cosmic perspective. It doesn't make you feel insignificant. It makes you feel responsible. It makes you realize that meaning isn't measured in size, but in participation. A planet's orbit, a civilization's conscience, an individual's compassion, they're all forms of alignment. They're all acts of maintaining balance against entropy. And that's not small work, that's cosmic work. Because when we preserve what is delicate truth, life, kindness. We are keeping the universe coherent. We are doing physics with our morality. So maybe in the end, that's what this planet teaches us. That existence is a fragile collaboration between chaos and care. And we, the improbable species that learn to notice, are its custodians. If we can hold that awareness gently, humbly, maybe we too will last longer than the odds predict. Maybe we'll keep orbiting. Maybe we'll keep discovering. Maybe we'll become the exception that endures. And someday, far in the future, another intelligence might point its telescope toward our sun, find a small blue dot still shimmering against the dark, and say, "There, that's the world that shouldn't have made it but did." Quote. And when they do, I hope they'll also find our message, still traveling through space, still echoing through time. We looked up, we learned, we cared, and against all odds, we continued. You know, the more time I spend thinking about this improbable planet, the more I realize that its greatest gift to us isn't data or discovery. It's perspective. Perspective is the antidote to arrogance. It's the cure for apathy. It's the one thing that can turn knowledge into wisdom. Because when you look at the universe from far enough away, everything we fight about starts to look very small, not meaningless, but scalable. From that vantage, you start to see patterns, repetitions, lessons written in the orbits of worlds, and the evolution of stars. You start to see that nature repeats itself, not because it's lazy, but because repetition is how it learns what works. And what works, more often than not, is balance. Every planet, every ecosystem, every atom is a negotiation between opposing forces: attraction and repulsion, order and entropy, chaos and structure. The tension between those forces isn't a flaw, it's what makes everything possible. That's what I find so beautiful about that planet that shouldn't exist. It's not an outlier because it broke the rules. It's an outlier because it used them differently. It's as if the universe is saying, there's still ways to survive you haven't thought of yet. That's a comforting thought, especially for us, a species that sometimes feels like it's run out of good options. Think about what it means to exist where you shouldn't. On a cosmic scale, Earth fits that description too. We orbit a star that's middle-aged, stable, and not too active rare qualities in a galaxy filled with violence. Our planet has the right atmosphere, the right distance, the right chemical mix. We live in a cosmic Goldilocks zone, so precise that it almost feels engineered, though it isn't. It's not design, it's discipline. It's the discipline of physics, the rigor of probability, the poetry of persistence. And yet, for all that precision, the system still allows for surprise. Life, consciousness, art, love. We are nature's improvisation and unscripted melody in the mathematics of the cosmos. And that, I think, is where meaning lives. Not in perfection, but in possibility. You see, the universe doesn't play favorites, but it does play fair. It gives every particle the same laws, every atom the same opportunities. It's up to each configuration of matter, whether a planet or a person, to decide what to do with those laws. That's what makes intelligence such a rare event. Because intelligence doesn't just follow the laws, it understands them. It recognizes patterns, predicts outcomes, changes behavior. And that's where we stand now. On this tiny, improbable world, the only known species capable of understanding the rules well enough to rewrite its own fate. That's power. And with power comes the temptation to forget humility. But if this universe has taught us anything, it's that humility isn't weakness. It's calibration. It's the way we align ourselves with reality. Every discovery we make, every black hole, every exoplanet, every spectral line is an invitation to recalibrate, to check if our instruments and our intentions are still pointed in the right direction. Because curiosity without humility becomes exploitation, and intelligence without ethics becomes extinction. That's why cosmic perspective matters. It's not about feeling small. It's about remembering scale. you can't feel insignificant once you realize that the atoms in your body were forged in stars. You can only feel grateful that you got to participate in something that ancient, that vast, that improbable. Now, there's something else about this planet that keeps me up at night. Its orbit isn't just wide, it's tilted, misaligned with the plane of its star's system. It moves to its own rhythm. It's out of step with its neighbors, but still part of the dance. And when I think about humanity, that feels familiar. We too are tilted, misaligned, out of sync. Our technology evolves faster than our wisdom. Our capability expands faster than our conscience. We orbit our own star, but not always in harmony. And yet, like that planet, we're still here, still circling, still trying to stabilize our path. That's not failure, that's learning. And the fact that we can even recognize our instability, that we can talk about it, measure it, and correct for it, is the greatest sign of intelligence we've ever displayed. The danger isn't in being imperfect. The danger is in pretending we're not. Every civilization collapses the moment it starts believing it's invincible. Every species declines when it forgets to stay curious. So if the universe offers us one lesson from 336 light years away, it's this: stay teachable. Even when you think you figured it out, stay teachable. Because arrogance has no gravity. It floats until it drifts into nothing. But curiosity keeps you tethered to truth. That's what science really is. Not a collection of facts, but a method for staying humble. When astronomers found this planet, they didn't celebrate their brilliance. They celebrated their ignorance, because ignorance is where discovery begins. That's something I wish more people understood. In science, being wrong is progress. Every failed hypothesis is a rung on the ladder toward truth. Every anomaly is a gift, not a threat. That's how we found this planet. That's how we'll find the next one. And that's how we'll eventually understand ourselves. Because the search for other worlds is really a search for perspective on this one. Every telescope, every probe, every spectrograph aimed at the sky is secretly asking one question: are we unique? And every discovery, even the strange ones, even the impossible ones, keeps answering the same way: you're not alone in being improbable. That's both comforting and challenging. It means that existence is more common than we thought, but significance still has to be earned. The cosmos gave us the raw materials. It's up to us to give them meaning. I think about that sometimes when I look at the night sky, how everything up there is both impossibly far and uncomfortably close. The light from that distant planet left its system centuries ago, traveling through the vacuum at 300,000 kilometers per second, just to reach us now. For all we know, that planet might already be gone, destroyed by a passing star, a collision, or entropy itself. And yet, its light still arrives. That's the cruel and beautiful thing about the universe. Even after things end, their light continues. Maybe that's what we're meant to learn from it. That what matters most isn't permanence, it's persistence. Because in the grand story of the cosmos, even a brief existence can echo forever if it radiates something worth remembering. And that's what humanity has the power to do. We may not last as long as the stars, but we can leave behind light that does. Not literal photons, though. Our radio waves are already racing outward into the dark, but light in the form of understanding, compassion, curiosity. Those are our radiations, our legacy of luminosity. The planet that shouldn't exist is shining. We should too. Maybe that's the real moral of this story, not about astronomy, but about agency. That improbable worlds don't survive because they're lucky. They survive because they adapt. And adaptation isn't about control. It's about participation. It's about learning the rhythm of the system and finding a way to stay in tune. The Earth does that every day. It tilts, it spins, it orbits, not perfectly, but steadily enough to keep life possible. And that's what we need to do too. Stay in motion, stay balanced, stay teachable, because motion is survival. Stillness, in the cosmic sense, is decay. So long as we keep orbiting truth, even if it's messy, even if it's uncertain, we'll continue to exist in the zones where life can thrive. The same physics that stabilizes a rogue planet can stabilize a rogue species. All it takes is awareness, adaptation, and attention. That's what we owe the universe and each other. So tonight, if you find yourself looking up, remember this. Somewhere out there, a planet we weren't supposed to find is circling a star we can barely see, reminding us that impossibility is just a temporary condition. Everything that exists today was once declared impossible. Flight, electricity, DNA, consciousness, love. We are, each of us, improbable worlds orbiting improbable stars, daring to persist in a universe that never promised us anything. That's not science fiction. That's science illuminated by humility. So keep orbiting, keep learning, keep shining, because in the end, that's what it means to exist in a universe that shouldn't have allowed it. To be improbable, to be aware, and to keep going anyway. Maybe that's what the stars have been trying to tell us all along, that survival is not the miracle. Awareness is, in the end, maybe the story of that impossible planet isn't really about astronomy at all. Maybe it's about us. Because when we look out there to worlds that shouldn't exist, to orbits that defy the models, what we're really seeing is a reflection of our own improbable endurance. The planet that shouldn't exist did not ask for permission. It didn't wait for the equations to approve. It simply found a way, and that's what we have to do too, to find a way to keep learning, to keep adapting, to keep our orbit steady, even when gravity feels uneven. Look at us, a species made from dust, trying to understand the stars. A civilization balanced on the thin edge of atmosphere, holding its breath between chaos and harmony. By all statistical accounts, we shouldn't have made it this far. And yet here we are. So maybe that's the most important discovery of all. That life itself is the universe's act of defiance against improbability. That awareness is not an accident, but an outcome, the cosmos experimenting with understanding. We are the evidence that the universe is capable of reflection. We are the anomaly that looks back. When I think about that distant planet, I picture it still circling its twin suns, not perfectly, not predictably, but persistently. That's what existence really is. Persistence under pressure. And if we can learn that lesson, if we can keep our balance, even when everything tilts, we might just earn our place among the stars. Because the universe isn't asking us to be perfect. It's asking us to participate, to nuance, to care. It doesn't need our worship. It needs our wonder. It needs us to keep the conversation alive. So when you step outside tonight, look up. That faint light you see left its home before your ancestors built the first cities, before the first human voice echoed through a cave. It traveled across centuries just to find your eyes. And in that moment, that brief meeting between ancient light and present consciousness, the universe becomes aware of itself again. That is not metaphor. That is physics. You are starlight, observing starlight. The cosmos looking back at its own reflection. So remember this. The universe doesn't just contain miracles. It is one. Every planet, every atom, every heartbeat is part of that miracle. And if a world that shouldn't exist can keep orbiting its suns, then surely a species that shouldn't exist can learn to protect its own. We are rare. We are fragile. We are improbable. And yet we endure, not by chance, by choice. By the choice to stay curious, by the choice to stay kind, by the choice to keep looking up, even when the gravity of life pulls us down. Because as long as there's someone left who wonders, the universe will never truly go dark. A final pause. The music swells a slow, radiant crescendo, like sunrise on a silent world. The planet that shouldn't exist does. And so do we. And that, in the end, is enough reason to keep the lights on. Keep wondering. Keep orbiting. Keep the universe awake.